Right, well hello guys, I'm going to make a beef stew this evening. Going to be fairly rich in carbs and in meat. It's a great stew that's really easy recipe, especially if you don't have much time to make things. You can throw it all together, leave it for an hour or so, and you've got a great dinner ready to eat. Okay, so first of all, ingredients. We have got mushrooms, carrots, pepper. I prefer my peppers raw, so I'm only adding one to the recipe. Onions, of course. Some big tomatoes and some cherry tomatoes, some squash. We've actually got 800 odd grams of beef there. Irish beef, grass-fed, always really good. Chopping board, ceramic knives. And over here, nice big pot for it to all cook away in. Olive oil. And then herbs-wise, it says black pepper. This is actually coriander seed. Black pepper. A field day just mixed nice paleo friendly herbs and seeds, and some chili bites. I'll tell you now, this chili bites does have a little bit of salt in it, but it's a very little bit. So for our purposes, it'll add a nice kick without adding very much salt at all. Okay, so first step is obviously going to be to wash our vegetables and chop them, and then I'll come back to the next step. Okay, so I've chopped some of the big tomatoes, 3 onions, that was 1 big one, 2 small ones. Half of a pepper so that we can put the rest in nice and chunky. One thing I didn't mention before was garlic, which I have now crushed into the bottom of here with a little bit of olive oil as well. One thing to think about at this stage is whether you're going to only use oil for your fat or whether you're going to add some avocado. Avocado will make it really creamy, which can be quite nice if you sort of are fancying something a bit more sort of stodgy, creamy, filling stew-like. So obviously if you're going to have avocado as well, then a little bit less oil. If you're not going to have avocado, then a bit more oil, and I usually add a bit more oil when I start putting the stew together. Helps tenderize the meat a little bit. So next step for now, I'm going to fry all of the bits and pieces that are in there off. You don't have to do this, you can just throw everything in together, but to bring out the flavours a little bit more, it's nice to fry it off. And then from there, once that's fried off, start to stir in the meat and the other veg, but I'll show you when we get to that step. Okay, just a quick tip for the butternut squash. You don't have to, but we find that it adds a bit of fibre to the meal, and the skin softens right down, so we leave the skin on the squash when we cook it in the stew. Take the ends off, and in this case there was a bit of a dodgy bit on the outside, so cut that away. If you are going to keep the skin on, make sure you scrub it thoroughly. And then obviously on the inside you've got the seeds and pith. Easiest thing to do, take a spoon, just scoop it out, and then you're free to chop up the squash like you would a potato or a carrot or anything else. Other thing to notice at this stage, all of the other veggies that I'm sticking in, so we've got tomatoes, both big and cherry, mushrooms, carrot, and then what was left of the pepper. Leave them quite chunky for this. They'll soften up nicely, but it gives the stew a little bit more substance rather than it being a beef soup. Okay, also at this stage, let me quickly show you what's going on over here. It smells awesome. So everything is now softened. The onions have softened right down, gone pretty see-through. So it's a good sign that it's ready to have everything else added. I've also turned the heat down, so it's continuing to cook away a little bit, but it's not going to be red hot when I add the beef, the other veg, and then the water. I've added the meat to the onions first. You don't have to, just gives you a chance to mix all of that in. Also make sure that the meat's at the bottom when you're cooking. I'm notorious for overfilling my pans, so by putting the meat in first, I can just make sure that I don't have any meat sticking out the top. Vegetables I know will cook with steam. Meat I can't be so sure of, so I'm always, to be safe, keep the meat at the bottom of the pan. Oops. As I'd anticipated, way too much stuff for the pan, but too late now because everything's in there. Lid off the olive oil. What I've done is made a little hole in the middle there. I'm just going to pour in some olive oil. I've checked my avocados, none of them are ripe enough, plus I had avocado for lunch, so we're going to get our fat from organic extra virgin olive oil. See, old favourite, nicely well used. All I'm going to do, pour that in over the top, over the herbs, a couple of tablespoons, because this pot's going to be at least 4 meals, certainly with 800 grams of beef. It'll do us at least 2 meals each. From here what I'm going to do is just mix it down as much as I can. The lid will fit over the top, and within a couple of minutes it'll all start to boil down as well. So next will be stirring. I've put it on heat number 7, So it's a mid to high heat. I usually leave it up there just to get everything boiling and bubbling away. You can then turn it down depending on how long you've got for it to cook. Obviously the longer and lower the heat, the softer the meat's going to be. So come back in about 15-20 minutes when it'll all be simmering, quick stir, and then you can walk away again for another half an hour or so. Well, I completely underestimated the pan and the amount of food that I cooked. So as you can see, I've had to change pans since we were last filming. However, managed to get through a power cut and the food is now simmering away nicely. I shall show you. Let the steam clear. Simmering away nicely. Give it a quick stir so you can see. As you can see, nice and chunky. This is a really great one, especially if you're struggling when you first go paleo and feel a need for something a little bit more heavy and hearty. The squash and the carrot combination in there makes it very thick. It's very, very filling. So it's nearly done. The meat's pretty much cooked now. Just a case of letting it tender up a little bit. So another 20 minutes I'd say, and it'll be pretty much ready to go. And there it is. Steaming stew ready to go. I'm running late, so I'm only having a big bowl of stew, but you can have a smaller amount with a side salad or with something like a raw zucchini cut with a Julienne grater, so you almost get noodles with it. There's a lot of carrot and squash in this, as we saw from when it was being prepared, which means there's already quite a high carb load. So if you do have anything else with it, you want something that's not going to be too heavy or too carb dense. Enjoy!